In the vast universe, the secrets of ancient civilizations have been passed down through generations. Stories of empires that once thrived and collapsed long before the first human ever gazed upon the night sky. Each civilization, each species in the universe has its own history, its own wars, and its own myths. But among them, one legend stood apart, a story passed down in darkened chambers and forgotten libraries, a story about humans. They were a ruthless race, relentless in their conquests, so much so that ancient species had purged all records of their existence. Some said they wiped themselves out in an apocalyptic war, while others believed they fled beyond the known galaxies, vanishing into the void. Yet their ghostly memory remained as a warning of what unchecked ambition could unleash. However, when these stories faded into obscurity, a mighty empire was holding the universe in its grasp. The Fyllor Empire, a great empire with unmatched fleets and technology far beyond its rivals, suddenly detected a signal from the edges of their territory. They dispatched a mighty fleet to deal with what they assumed was a pirate band or a lost colony ship. But when they saw the old crude ships of humanity, they dismissed them as relics of a forgotten era. Admiral Fyllor, with his fleet, ordered their immediate annihilation. But when the human fleet responded, doubts began to creep into his mind. The message was in a language the Fyllor Empire had erased from its records. "We are humanity. Surrender or be destroyed." Fyllor could hardly believe it. Humans, once thought to be extinct, could not possibly be here. Yet the ships moved like wraiths, dodging their fire with eerie precision. Despite their outdated technology, their weapons proved surprisingly effective. In just a few minutes, the first Fyllor ship was destroyed, followed by others. The order to annihilate was given, but it was too late. The Fyllor Empire realized with horror that the humans were not myths. They were real, and they had returned. The word spread like wildfire across the universe. The impossible had happened. The myths were true. The monsters had come back, and they were relentless. The Fyllor Empire, once the rulers of the galaxy, found itself facing an enemy it had never anticipated. Humanity fought with brutality, using tactics and strategies the Fyllor had never encountered. They didn't seek peace. They sought revenge for a history erased, for crimes long forgotten. As the Fyllor Empire scrambled to respond, it was clear. The humans weren't just seeking vengeance. They were here to reclaim what was theirs. Entire fleets were destroyed, planets burned, and the once mighty empire was crumbling under the relentless onslaught. The Fyllor leadership, led by Supreme Commander Fyllor, knew they had made a terrible mistake. The humans were unlike any enemy they had ever faced. They were not interested in negotiation. They fought with sheer brutality and relentless precision. Desperate, the Fyllor Empire called upon their archives, uncovering a dark secret. Before they rose to power, their ancestors had wiped out humanity. The Fyllor ancestors, believing humanity to be a threat, had committed genocide, erasing entire human worlds, erasing their history, and driving the survivors into the farthest reaches of space. They thought they had destroyed them, but they were wrong. Humanity had survived in the shadows, biding their time, waiting for the moment to exact their revenge. And now, after centuries of silence, they had returned, not as conquerors but as executioners. When the Fyllor Empire finally fell, the humans did not take their place as rulers. They did not seek to build an empire. They sought only retribution for the wrongs done to them long ago. A message was sent to the entire galaxy. Humanity has returned. We do not forget. We do not forgive. We understand justice. The Fyllor Empire was no more. What followed was a new era, where the galaxy was no longer under the iron fist of the Fyllor Empire. The galaxy had learned the truth. Humanity had not been eradicated. They had been erased, but now they had returned, and they would never be forgotten again. As the human fleets ravaged the Fyllor Empire, a new chapter in the ancient tale of vengeance began to unfold. Supreme Commander Fyllor, now broken by the loss of his empire, retreated to the heart of Fyllor's most secure station, Vonor Station, where a secret weapon, once only a whisper in the halls of their military council, was being prepared. This weapon, known only as the Celestial Shard, was a massive ancient artifact, said to be capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single blast. The Fyllor leadership believed it to be their last hope of turning the tide of the war, but they were gravely mistaken. Meanwhile, the humans, led by Admiral Lyra Grayson, had already seized control of the Fyllor capital, Raal Prime. With their flagship, the Resolute, anchored in orbit, Lyra watched as the last remnants of the Fyllor forces tried to rally against the inevitable. But as a new human fleet arrived to reinforce their position, a dark new enemy emerged. Out of the shadows of the war-torn galaxy came the Tharkan, a brutal and war-hungry race that had been lurking for centuries, waiting for the Fyllor Empire to fall so they could seize control of the remnants. The Tharkan were a savage reptilian species known for their bloodthirsty raids and merciless tactics. With their advanced stealth technology and a brutal warrior code, they had been hired by the Fyllor to carry out their last-ditch efforts of revenge against humanity. In the dark recesses of the galaxy, General Thor, the leader of the Tharkan, rallied his forces to challenge the humans. His fleet, known as the Wrath of Tharkan, was feared across many star systems for its ferocity and speed. Thor's cold, calculating demeanor and brutal leadership style had earned him the respect and fear of his people. He was no stranger to war, having fought countless battles in the fringes of space, but facing humanity was unlike any enemy he had encountered. The first skirmish between the humans and the Tharkan happened near the shattered remains of Chorus 99, a planet humanity had previously conquered. The Tharkan fleet emerged from a cloaked nebula, catching the human ships off guard. Admiral Lyra Grayson, however, was not easily intimidated. She immediately ordered her fleet to engage with ruthless efficiency, utilizing the human tactics that had already proved so successful against the Fyllor. The battle was swift but brutal. The Tharkan ships, though formidable, were no match for the precision and tenacity of the human forces. Captain Marcus Graves, a tactical genius aboard the Resolute, led a daring raid on the Tharkan flagship, the Blood Reaper. His team infiltrated the ship's central core and planted a series of explosive charges, crippling the Tharkan's command structure. But the victory came at a cost. During the mission, Captain Graves was gravely wounded, forcing Lyra to make a difficult decision: leave him behind or continue pushing forward in their mission to end the war. With the Tharkan temporarily pushed back, the human forces turned their attention to the final piece of the puzzle, the Celestial Shard. Fyllor, desperate to secure his last weapon of mass destruction, had taken refuge on Vonner Station, deep within Fyllor-controlled space. With the Tharkan retreating to lick their wounds, Lyra Grayson and her elite strike team launched a covert mission to infiltrate the station and seize the Celestial Shard before it could be activated. But the humans were not the only ones aware of the artifact's power. Zarin Jara, a rogue Fyllor scientist once loyal to the Dominion, had secretly allied himself with the Tharkan. Jara had his own reasons for wanting the shard. He believed it held the key to an even more terrifying weapon: the ability to resurrect the long-dead Fyllor monarchs and reawaken the Empire to its former glory. As Lyra's team approached Vonner Station, they encountered fierce resistance from both the Tharkan and Fyllor loyalists. The station's defenses were nearly impenetrable, and Jara had anticipated their every move, setting traps and ambushes along the way. In the chaos, new allies emerged. Riva Kai, a former Fyllor soldier who had defected after witnessing the horrors of the genocide, and Sithon Jarvis, a skilled hacker who had once worked for the Dominion's intelligence division. Both were seeking redemption and willing to risk everything to ensure the Celestial Shard did not fall into the wrong hands. A deadly game of cat and mouse ensued in the narrow corridors of Vonner Station, with Lyra's team facing off against both the Tharkan and Fyllor insurgents. Tensions were high, but Lyra remained determined, knowing that the fate of the galaxy rested on this mission. Every step brought them closer to the Celestial Shard, and closer to the final confrontation with Fyllor, Jara, and Thor. As the strike team reached the chamber containing the Celestial Shard, they were ambushed by Jara and his loyalists. With a chilling smile, Jara activated the artifact, causing the station to tremble and lights to flicker as a powerful energy began to radiate from the shard. But as the human forces fought to regain control, something unexpected happened. Captain Graves, still alive, had managed to reach the heart of the station, hacking into the shard's control systems and destabilizing its core. In a final, desperate act of vengeance, Fyllor attempted to escape the station as it began to collapse. But Lyra, with the help of her team, cornered him. The Supreme Commander, once so proud and unyielding, now cowered before the might of humanity, knowing that his empire was finished. With the celestial shard's power neutralized and the Fyllor and Tharkanan forces scattered, Lyra Grayson issued the final command. Humanity has returned, and we will never be erased again. The war was not over, but humanity had sent a clear message. They would not be stopped. As the galaxy prepared for the next phase of this new era, a new force had risen, one that would change the balance of power forever. With the destruction of the Celestial Shard's power and the fall of Vanner Station, humanity's victory seemed assured. But peace was fleeting. The galaxy had already witnessed the brutality of the humans, and there were whispers of a new threat emerging from the dark corners of the universe. The Hadrani Coalition, a group of nomadic spacefaring species that had avoided contact with the Dominion in the Fyllor Empire, had been watching the chaos unfold. The Hadrani had a different vision of the galaxy, one where power was decentralized and each species ruled their own destiny. Though they had remained neutral in the conflict, their interest in the war's outcome was clear. They saw humanity's relentless strength as both a threat and an opportunity. At the same time, Admiral Lyra Grayson and Captain Graves, now recovering from their injuries, found themselves at the center of a new political battle. Humanity had no interest in conquering the galaxy, but the Hadrani believed otherwise. Their fleet, a formidable force of mercenaries, diplomats, and warlords, was ready to strike, believing that humanity could not be trusted to govern the galaxy with such a powerful hand. As tensions grew, an unexpected alliance began to form. Reva Kai, the former Fyllor soldier who had defected, became a voice for peace within humanity's ranks. She argued that while humanity had the power to conquer, their true strength lay in forging alliances that would rebuild the galaxy and ensure its survival. Alongside her, Sethon Jarvis, the Dominion hacker who had betrayed his own people, worked to broker a delicate peace with the Hadrani. Together, they convinced the Hadrani leaders to meet for a summit. The Council of the Galactic Unity was born, and though it was an uncertain beginning, it signified the first step toward forging a new future. The Hadrani, wary but intrigued, agreed to a fragile truce with humanity. However, there were those within their ranks who still feared the rise of humanity's empire. The question loomed, could humanity be trusted to uphold their promise of peace? Or were they destined to become just another empire in a galaxy of war? While the political struggles raged on, a far darker force was gathering strength in the galaxy. The Tharkan, though defeated, had not been eradicated. General Drak Thor, leader of the Tharkan warband, had retreated to the remote planet of Zarash, a desolate world on the edge of the galaxy. Here, in the shadow of ruins left by their previous conquests, Drak Thor began to rebuild his forces. But his vision was no longer limited to the Tharkan. In the aftermath of the war, many other factions, dissatisfied with the new galactic order, began to rally to his cause. These factions included exiled Fyllor loyalists, disillusioned mercenaries, and rogue species from beyond the known galaxy, those who had suffered under the new peace, and those who craved the chaos that the Tharkan thrived in. Drak Thor's goal was clear, to unite the broken fragments of the old empires and strike back at the humans, once and for all. He began to forge alliances with the remnants of the Fyllor military and the most brutal mercenary groups, building a force greater than any the galaxy had seen in centuries. His new fleet, the Vengeful Wrath, began to take shape, and Drak Thor vowed that the next time humanity would face him, it would be their reckoning. The fragile peace forged between humanity and the Hadrani coalition was about to be tested in ways no one could have anticipated. Lyra Grayson, now fully recovered, stood at the helm of the human fleet once more. Her eyes focused on the horizon, where the Vengeful Wrath had been spotted, advancing on a course toward the galactic capital. The truce was shattered. Humanity, faced with the threat of total annihilation, had no choice but to confront Drak Thor and his growing empire. But the Tharkan weren't the only threat humanity faced. As Drak Thor launched his offensive, multiple factions from across the galaxy, some seeking revenge, others seeking dominance, joined the fray. turning the galactic conflict into a sprawling war that threatened to engulf all. Humanity's strength, once built on the foundation of vengeance, would now be tested by the greatest challenge of all: unity. Lyra and her fleet had to rally not only the Hadrani, but also independent systems and planets who had never chosen a side. The Galactic Coalition, the united forces of the galaxy, was formed in desperation to confront the Tharkon threat. The final confrontation took place in the heart of the galaxy. As the Battle of Tharkon Prime raged, humanity fought alongside their allies, but it quickly became clear that Drakthor's forces were more formidable than anyone had anticipated. His tactics were savage, and his fleet outnumbered them. The battle would determine the fate of the galaxy. Would the humans, now united in a cause greater than vengeance, prevail against the remnants of the old empires? Or would the Tharkon's wrath consume everything in its path? The battle was brutal and decisive. The vengeful wrath fell, and with it, the heart of the Tharkan forces. Drakthor, in a final desperate bid for victory, ordered his flagship to self-destruct, taking down a portion of the Galactic Coalition's forces with him. The galaxy was left in ruins, but the humans stood victorious. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council was formed. Humanity, now a cornerstone of peace in the galaxy, took on the mantle of leadership not as conquerors, but as guardians. The lessons of the past of vengeance, of destruction, and of chaos were now part of the galaxy's history, a history that humanity would help guide into a new age. Admiral Lyra Grayson, now hailed as a hero, stood before the council, knowing that the journey was far from over. The galaxy had been saved from the brink of annihilation, but a new chapter had only just begun. There would be challenges ahead, but as long as humanity stood together with their allies, they would never again be erased from history. The galaxy, once again, would thrive in peace, and though the scars of war would never fully heal, humanity had proven that they were not just survivors, they were the architects of a new, united future.